ロリータとは、日本でのみ知られているストリートファッションの一種です。しかし私にとってロリータは、ただのファッションと言い切ることのできないものです。フリルのブラウス、コルセットでウエストを絞った大きなフリルのペチコートの上にスカート、そして奇抜なヘッドドレスを身につけることは、ロリータに身を捧げるという私の誓いです。もしこのような目立つ奇抜な格好をしていなければ、友達もできるし、男の子にモテるだろうと周りの人たちは言います。しかしそのように言われれば言われるほど、私のロリータに対する熱は高まり、逆に徹底的にロリータファッションを身につけようと決心してしまいます。ところで、合理的であることが幸福を保証するのでしょうか。たとえそうだとしても、その幸福は様々なことに耐えることによってのみ得られるのではないでしょうか。いずれにせよ、何にでも我慢しなければならないのであれば、不幸な方がいいです。なぜなら私たちロリータ愛好家たちは、単に生まれたという事実以上に大きな不幸はないということを知っているからです。
Kamikaze Girls by Novala Takemoto is a Japanese young adult novel that, at first glance, appears as innocent and delicate as its protagonist, Momoko Ryugasaki, a 17-year-old girl captivated by the whimsical world of Lolita fashion. This style, with its frills, lace, bonnets, and doll-like dresses, seems to cocoon her in a childlike fantasy, yet beneath this surface of sweetness, the novel reveals a deeper, more introspective exploration of fashion as both a shield and a statement, as well as the tension between individuality and the pressures of conformity. It is a story that quietly unravels the complexities of self-expression and the ways we navigate a world that often demands we blend in, even as we yearn to stand apart. Momoko's life is a tapestry of contradictions stitched together with threads of rebellion and refinement. From a young age, she found solace in the delicate art of embroidery, a passion that blossomed in middle school and flourished into full embrace of Rococo aesthetics by high school. Fleeing the gritty consumerist sprawl of Amagasaki, a suburb outside Osaka, dominated by Yanki subculture, pachinko parlors, and counterfeit designer shops, Momoko and her father, whom she only refers to as the loser, relocated to the rural quiet of Shimotsuma in Ibaraki Prefecture. Her father, a former yakuza with a penchant for gambling and alcohol, had once peddled counterfeit Versace to make ends meet after Momoko's mother, a cheap hostess, left him for a doctor. When a scheme to sell fake dual-branded Versace and Universal Studios merchandise backfired, the yakuza forced him to abandon the business, prompting the move to Shimotsuma. Here, Momoko's devotion to the Lolita fashion brand Baby the Stars Shine Bright marked her as an outcast, earning her the labels weird and ugly from her classmates. To fund her extravagant lifestyle, Momoko posted an online ad for the leftover counterfeit Versace, catching the attention of Ichigo Shirayuri, a 17-year-old Yanki and member of all-female Bosuzoku biker gang, the Ponytails. Despite their stark differences, Momoko, a refined Lolita with a disdain for vulgarity, and Ichigo, a vulgar anarchist with a love for the chaotic energy of Yanki culture, the two formed an unlikely bond. Ichigo, who dreams of becoming a motorcycle mechanic, is as much an individualist as Momoko. Through her rebellion manifests her outrageous, custom-embroidered Kamikaze jacket and her decked-out scooter, which she proudly calls her other self. Together, they navigate their shared status as outcasts in a society that prizes conformity, finding common ground in their mutual need for money. Ichigo to pay the legendary embroiderer Emma for a tribute to her gang's graduating boss Akimi, and Momoko to sustain her devotion to Baby. Their partnership leads them to pachinko parlors where Momoko, despite her rococo ideals, proves oddly good at the game. Splitting their earnings, they fund their respective obsessions, their friendship deepening as they challenge each other's worlds. A pivotal moment arrives when they visit Baby together, and Momoko's exquisite embroidery catches the eye of Akinori Isobe, the brand's representative director. Impressed, he hires Momoko to work on a limited edition line and recruits Ichigo as a model. However, the line's success stirs trouble for Ichigo as the gang's new boss, Miko, disapproves of Ichigo's new life and grows power-hungry, betraying the group's anarchist philosophy and threatens Ichigo with lynching. In a daring rescue, Momoko confronts the gang with water balloons, unwittingly invoking the historical terror tactic of kerosene-filled balloons to intimidate them. The novel closes with the two lying in a field like lovers. Momoko reflects on Ichigo as the best friend she's ever had, their connection a testament to the power of individuality in a collectivist society. Through their shared defiance of societal norms, Momoko through her devotion to Rococo elegance, and Ichigo through her anarchic spirit, they carve out a space in each other, where they find a mirror of their own resilience, a reminder that even in a world that demands conformity, there is beauty in being unapologetically yourself. Momoko says, a true Lolita must nurture a Rococo spirit and live a Rococo lifestyle. But what exactly does the Rococo lifestyle entail? To understand this, we must look back to Japan's fascination with Europe, particularly France, which began during the Meiji period. As Japan opened its borders under pressure from the United States, it turned to European nations as models for modernization. France, often seen as the global capital of art, fashion, and luxury, became romanticized in Japanese culture as a place of hedonistic elegance and refined living. The French way of life, with its emphasis on leisure, fine dining, and appreciation for the arts, resonated deeply with many Japanese people who sought to incorporate a similar sense of balance and beauty into their own lives. This cultural admiration laid the foundation for the Rococo-inspired ideals that Lolita fashion embodies today. After World War II, the American aesthetics began to influence Japan, laying the groundwork for what would eventually become Lolita fashion. The earliest hints of this style emerged in the 1960s and 70s, inspired by the Romantic fashion movement in the United States. This movement drew heavily from French Victorian aesthetics, emphasizing intricate details and delicate craftsmanship in its garments. By the 1970s, Japanese brands like Milk and Angelic Pretty began capturing the imagination of young Japanese women, blending these romantic influences with a uniquely Japanese sensibility. As with many Japanese fashion brands, Lolita found its footing in Harajuku, Tokyo's vibrant hub of youth culture and creativity. The 1990s marked a turning point with the rise of Fruits magazine, an indie fashion publication based in Harajuku. It showcased the modern iteration of Lolita fashion, a striking blend of ultra-feminine and ultra-punk aesthetics. Back then, though, it wasn't called Lolita. Instead, these styles were part of subcultures known as Natural K and Atome. The early 2000s saw Lolita fashion explode in popularity thanks in part to the cult classic Kamikaze girls. Around this time, fans of the style began embracing the term Lolita to describe themselves. Initially, the name carried a derogatory connotation, as critics associated the childlike aesthetics with inappropriate fetishization and the goal of attracting a certain type of man. However, many believe that fans of the style reclaimed the term, transforming it into a symbol of empowerment and self-expression. While the exact moment when Lolitas began identifying with the term remains unclear, what's certain is that this fashion movement evolved into a celebration of individuality, creativity, and a bold rejection of societal norms. While every country has its rebellious youth cultures, Japan's most prominent is arguably the Yanki, a subculture of working-class youth known for their defiance and bold style. Rooted in Japan's post-war nationalism and militarization, the Yanki aesthetic draws inspiration from work attire and kamikaze jackets, as seen on Ichigo. Often described as wannabe yakuza, Yankees aren't a part of an organized crime aristocracy. Instead, they're more like delinquents, engaging in drinking, gambling, and pranks. They reject the strict conformity of Japanese collectivism and are frequently labeled as low class. The Yanki subculture traces its origins back to the 1950s with its heart in the Bosuzoku, gangs known for modifying cars and motorcycles roaring through the streets. The term Yanki has a contested etymology. Some believe it's a corruption of the American Yankee, while others argue it was loosely adopted after Japan's exposure to American GI culture, rock and roll music, and army surplus clothing. Author Ikuya Sato suggests the term reflects a general impression of vulgarity and gaudiness associated with Americans or American popular culture, which aligned with the Yankees' rebellious style. Yankee culture became a staple in Japanese media, with iconic representations like the 1980s manga high teen boogie, known as the Yankee Bible. Yet Yankee women, in particular, face criticism for defying traditional gender roles through their fashion and lifestyles. Their boldness challenges societal norms, making them both celebrated and scrutinized within Japanese culture. How does Kamikaze Girls use fashion to challenge societal norms around gender, class, and individualism? At first glance, Lolita fashion, with its frills, lace, and doll-like silhouettes, might seem like the epitome of ultra-femininity, restrictive or regressive. It could be argued that such an aesthetic is the antithesis of freedom and equality, but for Momoko, Lolita is anything but limiting. She describes it as ultimate individualism, a style that embodies the spirit of punk and anarchy more than any other philosophy. For Momoko, Lolita is a rebellion against conformity. She justifies her excessive consumerism not as vanity but as a radical act of self-expression. She would rather be lonely with her strange, prized possessions than be unhappy by bending to societal expectations. Yet Momoko's relationship with fashion is complex. She claims that smart people don't bother with the frivolity of fashion consumerism, but fashion theorist Gwendolyn Grewal challenges this notion. She writes, "Smart people know you can't judge a book by its cover. Things are not always what they seem. Caring about fashion for its own sake, or appearance for appearance's sake, is surely the greatest of all sophistry. It is superficial, shallow, vain, but isn't it strange to live a life of careful observation, you could say, a life that treats the world with kids' gloves, and yet to have no care for what you wear? Fashion, after all, is a language. The clothes we wear signal things about us to others, our status, our gender, and the subcultures or philosophies we align with. If someone wears a band tee, they likely resonate with the artist's message. The same logic applies to the brands we choose. As Joanne Entwistle notes in The Fashioned Body, fashion and dress have a complex relationship to identity. Fashion is a means of self-expression, but because clothes cannot speak for themselves, we open ourselves up to misinterpretation. This is a tension Momoko and Ichiko navigate throughout the novel. Too often we let brands sell to us rather than critically examining why we align with them. We succumb to algorithmic and social pressures, wearing clothes without understanding their deeper significance.
There has to be some inner work, and I think the inner work is like 99% of the fashion, and 1% of the fashion is putting on the clothes. Because if you don't have a reason to be wearing the clothes, if you don't know why you're wearing the clothes, if you don't understand why you're wearing the clothes or what drew you to the clothes or what it means when you wear the clothes, you wear them in a very different way than somebody who has those understanding.
This idea extends beyond fashion. Why do we like the things we like? Why do we choose to spend money at certain places? These are questions Momoko and Ichiko grapple with as they forge their identities, and young readers can adopt a critical examination of who they are on the inside and what type of consumers they are. Momoko and Ichiko have done the inner work. They wear Lolita and Yanki fashion authentically, using their clothing to subvert societal expectations around status and gender. Lolita, often perceived as childlike, draws criticism for its infantilizing aesthetic. Momoko is mocked for dressing like a child, but in doing so, she subverts traditional notions of status and maturity. Her choice to embrace Lolita speaks to the novel's broader theme of coming of age. Far from idolizing childhood, a time she remembers is far from idyllic. Momoko uses Lolita to reclaim her agency. The modest, non-sexualized nature of the style allows her to reject societal pressures to conform to conventional standards of femininity. This refusal to conform isolates Momoko from her community, a poignant reflection of Japan's cultural emphasis on collectivism and the pervasive loneliness that can result from standing apart. Yet, it is through her friendship with Ichigo that Momoko begins to overcome this loneliness. Ichigo, too, turns to Yanki subculture as a way to cope with her own isolation. Ichigo finds community in her biker gang, the Ponytails, but what ultimately draws her to Momoko is Momoko's unwavering refusal to conform. This inspires Ichigo to question her own allegiance to the gang's increasingly rigid hierarchy, ultimately rejecting conformity herself. At its heart, Kamikaze Girls is a story about rebellion, identity, and the power of fashion to transcend societal expectations. But to fully understand the depth of Momoko's Lolita fashion and Ichigo's Kamikaze jacket, we must look beyond the surface and into the cultural and spiritual underpinnings that shape their choices. In Japan, Shintoist beliefs infuse inanimate objects, like dolls and clothing, with a sense of spirit, or kami. This perspective transforms Lolita fashion from mere dress-up into something far more profound. For Momoko, her Lolita garments are not just clothes, they are vessels of identity imbued with a spirit that reflects her innermost self. This stands in stark contrast to the Western view of dolls and doll-like fashion as childish or trivial. In Japan, dolls are not just toys, they are artifacts that can harbor spirits, making Lolita fashion an even more deeply personal and almost sacred act of self-expression. The novel's title, Kamikaze Girls, encapsulates this duality of fragility and rebellion. The Kamikaze pilot's motto, "If you have nothing much to live for, you have nothing much to lose," resonates with both Momoko and Ichigo, who use their respective styles to navigate a world that often feels alienating and oppressive. Momoko's Lolita fashion combines the kawaii aesthetic with a punk-like defiance, while Ichigo's Kamikaze jacket, embroidered with symbols of her biker gang and the rising sun, reflects a similar tension between cuteness and chaos. This blending of kawaii and kamikaze speaks to a broader cultural sentiment in post-war Japan, where the obsession with cuteness emerged as both a form of escapism and a way to cope with the loss and trauma of war. Kawaii culture, often seen as a response to Japan's wartime past, offers a fantasy of innocence and purity, allowing individuals to reclaim a sense of identity in the face of economic and social struggles. Momoko and Ichigo embody this cultural tension. Momoko's Lolita fashion is not just a rejection of societal norms, it's a reclamation of agency, a way to assert her individuality in a world that demands conformity. Ichigo's kamikaze jacket, meanwhile, symbolizes her anarchic spirit and her refusal to be defined by her circumstances. Together, they represent the conflicting yet complementary forces of kawaii and kamikaze, softness and strength, innocence and rebellion. In the end, Kamikaze Girls challenges us to rethink our assumptions about fashion, identity, and culture. It invites us to consider how the clothes we wear are not just fabric, but extensions of our souls, spirits in their own right. And it reminds us that whether through the delicate frills of a Lolita dress or the bold embroidery of a kamikaze jacket, fashion can be a powerful act of resistance.